Welcome to this module, which is part of the Trauma-Informed Mental Wellness Professional Development series. The topic of this presentation is Trauma-Informed Educational Practices, Principles, and Examples. My name is April Garrity, and I'm a professor in the Department of Clinical Sciences at Georgia Southern University. This presentation is made possible by a grant from the National Youth Advocacy and Resilience Research Center at Georgia Southern University. The learning objectives are provided here. Please take a moment to read through them. Before we begin discussing specific trauma-informed educational practices, I first want to emphasize what trauma-informed teaching and learning is not. It is not a substitute for mental health or other healthcare services, nor is it a reason to decrease academic rigor or standards. It isn't the same thing as academic accommodations for students with documented disabilities. And it definitely is not all or nothing. You can pick as many or as few practices as resonate with you to use in your teaching. In fact, you might find that you are already applying some of the strategies that will be highlighted here. We will discuss each of Carello's 7 principles of trauma-informed teaching and learning separately, and specific strategies for each principle will be offered. Principle 1 is physical, emotional, and academic safety. Ensuring students' feelings of safety is paramount and has a prominent role in preventing unintentional re-traumatization of our students. Re-traumatization, sometimes referred to as being triggered or activated, can occur when an individual has an experience that reminds them of previous trauma. Re-traumatization should be avoided because it exacerbates the traumatic stress an individual is already experiencing related to previous trauma and may hinder their recovery. By creating a classroom environment that fosters physical, emotional, and academic safety, faculty support students in reaching their academic potential. The following trauma-informed practices may be helpful in establishing physical, emotional, and academic safety and in avoiding re-traumatization in the classroom. Be mindful of the amount of personal disclosure required or expected for the completion of assignments. Consider whether potentially triggering content could be removed from a course without creating curricular gaps or other issues. Potentially triggering content could include information about or references to life-threatening situations like war, abuse, violence, or racism, as well as homophobia, fatphobia, and other trauma-inducing experiences. Some advocate for providing content or trigger warnings in addition to considering removal of content. However, the usefulness of content or trigger warnings has come under scrutiny, and recent evidence suggests that not only is the helpfulness of trigger warnings in question, but they may even be harmful to students with trauma histories. Allow students to sit wherever they feel most comfortable within the classroom. Reconsider class discussion participation requirements or expectations when content is potentially triggering. This can allow students to process the information without feeling pressured to contribute to the classroom dialogue on the topic. And finally, use an authoritative teaching style. The authoritative teaching style is marked by high standards and expectations in the classroom, as well as a high level of warmth and openness in student-teacher relationships. Authoritative teachers, sometimes referred to as warm demanders, are thought to facilitate an optimal learning environment in which students feel supported within firm boundaries. Principle 2 is trustworthiness and transparency. Being trustworthy and having the ability to trust others are among the most basic requirements for daily functioning in society. However, individuals who have experienced trauma may have difficulty trusting others, often because their trust has been deeply betrayed at some point in the past. Transparency is a powerful tool for fostering students' trust. Transparency in Teaching and Learning in Higher Education, or TILT, is a framework that promotes instructional transparency through simple and practical strategies. TILT Higher Ed was developed specifically to support students, including those from diverse or minority backgrounds, who may be more likely to have experienced trauma than non-minority students. The TILT Higher Ed website is a comprehensive resource for information about the framework, as well as for examples of TILT Higher Ed practices and templates. Some strategies that foster transparency include creating transparent assignment instructions. These include detailed information about what students are expected to learn through the assignment, skills they are expected to practice, how to complete the task, and clear grading criteria. Consider including samples of work that meet the criteria, as well as samples that do not. Create clear policies and adhere to them fairly and objectively. Avoid creating policies that are difficult to implement because they are too inflexible or too harsh. Maintain open lines of communication with students. Respond to communication from students within a reasonable amount of time. Let them know your typical response time to their communications with you. Finally, consider creating a liquid syllabus. Liquid syllabus is a term used by Pacansky-Brock to describe a syllabus that is easy for students to access and understand. The QR code on this slide will take you to her website to learn more and see examples of liquid syllabi. Pacansky-Brock advocates for using warm and humanizing language, as well as short videos, and maintaining the syllabus in a web-based platform that students can access without a password. Principle 3 is support and connection. Connection can be thought of as a sense of being part of a community, which encompasses feelings of belonging, bonding, integration, and satisfaction. Research suggests that for college students, feeling connected is an indicator of students' physical and mental health. For example, students who report feeling more connected also report less substance misuse, fewer depressive symptoms, and greater success in college. The classroom community and the instructor-student relationship present unique opportunities for establishing and reinforcing support and connection. Strategies for supporting and connecting with students in the trauma-informed classroom emphasize providing referral information to students who are struggling with physical or mental health, as well as for academic support services. Hosting guest speakers to allow for connection within the discipline, and possibly networking for career opportunities. Encouraging students to become engaged in communities of like minded peers, for example, student organizations. Offering support to help students manage their frustration related to learning complex concepts. And helping students understand the potential effects of their mindsets for facilitating growth mindsets, reducing frustration when learning difficult concepts, and reframing their perceptions about their own abilities. For example, reframing a student's mindset, such as, I don't quite understand this concept clearly yet, instead of, I'm not smart enough to understand this. A growth mindset exists when an individual believes that they can change or develop certain attributes, such as intellectual functioning. Alternatively, a fixed mindset exists when an individual believes that these attributes cannot be changed. Research suggests that mindset shapes learning and academic performance, and vice versa. In other words, if students operate from a growth mindset, they are more likely to persevere through challenging learning experiences, which can lead to more positive attitudes and outcomes. This success, in turn, creates a positive feedback loop, sustaining the growth mindset. Mindsets are malleable and can be modified based on input and context. Not only have specific interventions shown promise for helping students develop growth mindsets, but research also suggests that teaching students about the brain's ability to change in response to input and the principles of neuroplasticity can be an effective strategy for fostering growth mindset. We can support growth mindset by emphasizing that learning is a process and holding students to high standards while simultaneously ensuring they have appropriate scaffolds to support their learning. Principle 4 is collaboration and mutuality. In the trauma-informed approach, the concepts of collaboration and mutuality refer to working together and to doing so in a manner that minimizes any pre-existing or role-related power differences. Specifically, within trauma-informed teaching and learning, this principle translates to students and instructors sharing decision-making power to ensure representation and success for all students in the class. Collaboration and mutuality practices based on the Universal Design for Learning include developing opportunities for students to participate in cooperative learning or study groups that are structured such that all members have equal roles and responsibilities, and the group has a shared learning goal. Being intentional about including all learners in class discussions. One way to do this is by being aware of and disrupting classroom discussion norms. Classroom discussion norms are behaviors that commonly occur across many classroom contexts. The consolidation of responsibility is the phenomenon in which a small minority of students account for most of the comments or responses in a class discussion. A study of relationships between class participation, class traits, student traits, and professor traits suggested that female students were more likely to participate in female instructors' classrooms, a finding that was linked to specific instructor traits, including female professors being perceived as more supportive, more approachable, and offering more useful feedback. Classroom interaction norms and comprehension of material were the most significant predictors of student confidence. Student confidence also contributed to class participation, a finding that was more pronounced among female students than male students. Considering that students who have a history of trauma are likely to experience chronic physical, behavioral, and emotional barriers to levels of confidence and comprehension of material, instructors can support these students through classroom management techniques. Such techniques include working with students to establish interaction expectations that would help them build confidence. For instance, determine what behaviors convey respect for the speaker and their comments, and include those behaviors as an expected interaction norm in the classroom. Asking questions that may not have just one correct answer, or questions that are opinion based, to minimize students' concerns that they're going to answer a question incorrectly in front of the class. Allowing extra time and encouraging students to use their resources to formulate their thoughts. This helps establish class discussions are not a race, nor are they a test. Even though these practices might encourage some of our students to disrupt the consolidation of responsibility norm in the classroom, instructors must also consider that there will be students who, for whatever reason, may not participate in classroom discussions. Establishing clear expectations about classroom responsibilities regarding discussion participation can also be a helpful practice. Be explicit in describing how and how often students should plan to participate in discussions. For more on the topic of discussion versus participation, see the resource provided at the QR code on this slide. Principle 5, Empowerment, Voice, and Choice, emphasizes the importance of students' autonomy and resilience. Another important aspect of empowerment, voice, and choice is that of supporting students' development of self-advocacy skills. Universal design for learning based practices to address empowerment, voice, and choice include creating activities and assignments that allow for active, engaged, and authentic learning, providing students with prompts or templates to facilitate self-reflection on knowledge and skills relevant to the course content, designing activities that allow learners to self-differentiate by choosing options based on the desired complexity of the activity, but in which all activities achieve the same learning outcomes. Empowering students by giving them choices is a compelling way to increase their engagement with content and, by extension, improve their learning. Some of the ways we as instructors can design courses and learning activities to include choice are simple and don't require much preparation on our part, such as assigning projects, presentations, and papers with the same basic requirements for all students, but for which they can select their own topics. Another example, one that does require a bit more instructor effort, is creating a choice board. This is a list of possible activities from which students can select to fulfill a particular course requirement. Choice boards are a form of differentiated instruction. According to Dosh and Zion, differentiation may be thought of as a teacher mindset that all learners respond differently to instruction. Several studies have provided evidence that using differentiated instructional techniques in the college classroom were received favorably by students and also led to statistically significant improvements in student engagement and learning. Differentiated instruction offers promise for promoting empowerment, voice, and choice within a trauma-informed classroom. Here is an example of a choice board assignment from an introductory course in Communication Sciences and Disorders. In this example, students have one required activity, a quiz. They can then choose whatever additional activities they would like to complete. For this example, students must complete the quiz, which is worth up to 20 points, and then complete additional activities worth 10 points. The entire assignment is worth 30 points. Constructing choice boards is more work intensive for the instructor, but choice boards also have greater potential for students to engage in self-differentiation based on factors such as their readiness, learning preferences, and interests. Choice boards allow students to integrate their background knowledge, diverse lived experiences, strengths, and areas of interest, leveraging those aspects so students can learn in more meaningful ways. Principle 6 is social justice. According to the United Nations, social justice is broadly understood as the fair and compassionate distribution of the fruits of economic growth. In addition to this general definition, the principles of access, equity, and inclusion are central to the concept of social justice. As educators, we are uniquely positioned to provide a model of social justice in our classrooms. Some practices for addressing social justice in the classroom through a trauma-informed lens include: consider using open educational resources, or OER, being aware of your own biases and blind spots, we all have them, and recognize how those biases might affect classroom practices. Cultivating an environment in which microaggressions are addressed constructively. Learning about and honoring students' gender identities, preferred names, and preferred pronouns. Other recommendations include the use of alternative classroom discussion management and grading methods, such as specifications grading. Specifications, or specs grading, is an alternative to traditional point or percentage-based grading. Alternative grading approaches should be considered because traditional grading systems have inherent flaws. Traditional grading systems are vulnerable to various implicit cognitive biases, such as the halo effect and racial bias. Specs grading has the potential to provide more meaningful information about what a student has learned, minimize the effect of bias, and improve consistency and equity. To implement SPECS grading, instructors create bundles of assignments that students complete to earn their desired grade in a course. Performance on individual assignments within each bundle may be assessed in a binary fashion, such as pass, fail. Alternatively, non-binary frameworks may be applied, such as pass, almost, try again. Regardless of the framework applied to the individual assignments, students who do not pass are given at least one opportunity to revise their work. SPECS grading also emphasizes transparency in grading by sharing grading criteria in advance, providing examples of work, noting how the examples have or have not met the criteria, and stating the learning objectives or skills students will gain from assignments. Here is a basic SPECS grading example that shows how SPECS grading utilizes bundles of assignments to determine a course grade rather than traditional points earned or averages of scores. Principle 7 is resilience, growth, and change. Broadly defined, resilience is the ability to effectively cope with adversity. Resilience includes behaviors such as seeking alternative solutions to problems or increasing the amount of effort put toward a difficult task. On the other hand, a lack of resilience may be characterized by resorting to academic dishonesty, becoming angry or aggressive, and even giving up. Evidence suggests that resilience can be developed, so we can take steps to foster resilience among our students, both those who have a history of trauma exposure and those who do not, in their academics by structuring our courses in a way that focuses on their ability to grow and change through learning. Practices that facilitate resilience, growth, and change in the classroom include focusing on rewarding desirable outcomes rather than penalizing undesirable ones, assigning and giving feedback on multiple drafts of written assignments to allow for and illustrate growth on those tasks, exhibiting a positive attitude about your students' learning that communicates your belief in their ability to grow and change, providing feedback that encourages students to persevere, specifically guides students as to how to improve their performance, fosters their insight and awareness of their performance, and focuses on meeting a competency or learning objective rather than getting a good grade. In addition, providing feedback that is individualized and substantive. Some of the practices discussed in this presentation can address more than one trauma-informed teaching and learning principle. The slide deck at this QR code includes some suggestions to help you get started with multitasking trauma-informed teaching practices, along with the principles they address. The principles are listed there in alphabetic order. This presentation has provided a number of practical strategies you can implement for moving toward a more trauma-informed approach in the classroom. So now consider, what is one thing you can do starting now to begin this shift toward more trauma-informed teaching? If you would like a copy of this reference list, please feel free to email me. My email address is at the top of this slide. Thank you for participating in this module of the Trauma-Informed Mental Wellness Professional Development series. We are interested in hearing about your experience and are seeking ways to improve opportunities to provide professional development on these topics or related topics in the future. If you are willing to participate in a brief survey related to this module, please navigate to our survey at the QR code on this slide.